You're listening to Scribble Talk, a podcast for bid and proposal professionals. My name is Bhaskar Sundram, and with my co-host,
Ashley Case,
we will be sitting down with our industry veterans to share their stories, discuss their career, and learn how to make an impact in the industry.
Today's guest is Gillian Dionne. After 23 years in the DC metro area working for various federal contractors, including the MITRE Corporation, General Dynamics IT, and several A-Day companies, Gillian is now a one-woman proposal shop based in the Space Coast of Florida. Eau Gallie by the Sea Proposal Consulting focuses on helping small businesses win federal and state contracts. An APMP member since 2001, Gillian has presented at numerous international and regional APMP conferences and professional days, served as a certification member, served on the APMP International Board of Directors, and is currently the venue hotel coordinator for the Southern Proposal Accent Conference, SPAC. She is certified at the practitioner level at APMP. Welcome, Gillian, to Scribble Talk. Great to have you with us.
Oh, this is exciting. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, we're so excited to learn more about you. So we're curious, where were you born? Where did you grow up and where did you go to school?
Well, I was born in Rhode Island, and I think since that day I've had a little complex about it being such a small state. And a lot of people not knowing that it's a state, they think it's part of New York, kind of like similar to Long Island. So I grew up there, and I went to high school in Rhode Island. I went to undergraduate at the University of Rhode Island. And when I was done with that, I decided it was time to move on because I'd seen and done it all in what we call Little Rhodey.
So from university, where did you move to then?
I packed up my brand new car that I got for graduation with everything I owned, including a gerbil, and I moved to Washington, D.C. area.
Okay, and did you pursue something related to what you studied in college?
Well, yeah, my undergraduate was journalism. So when I got to DC area, I wanted to go to graduate school. So I spent about 6 months as a temp. Back then, word processing was big. So I temped at a lot of the big companies around the Beltway to find the right company that would pay for my graduate degree. And that's how I ended up at the MITRE Corporation. So I went in as a communications specialist. And so I used my education as a writer and my interest in technology to, I was there 5 years, and I ended up with my master's degree from that stint at MITRE.
Oh, very cool. What did you get your master's degree in?
I got in information systems, the management side of it. Not really, it's a technical degree, but it's more of managing the systems and on how they interact. And I was from Strayer. At the time, it was Strayer College. Now it's Strayer University.
Okay, very cool. And so what did you do after leaving MITRE?
I took a little vacation and came to Florida for the first time. And I worked as a consultant for the first time, doing some things it was Johnson Controls at the time. They became IAP Worldwide Services. Kind of like the circle. It was a circle that I ended up back in Florida many years later, and I went back to Virginia after about probably a couple of years, and that's when I fell into doing work that took me down the proposal rabbit hole.
Okay, so what was that work that finally led you to proposals?
I was working for an 8A, and they'd hired me on as a desktop publisher, and I became a work assignment manager. They had a customer that really liked me, so I steadily was promoted doing the customer work. And one day, this is probably how most people experience proposals, the owner of the 8A said, "Hey, our recompete is due tomorrow.
Ooh.
Nobody's leaving until it's done." So we were all in a conference room all night long, lots of pizza, lots of bad ideas, and a lot of bad writing. And I thought to myself, is this really how they do this? Yeah, it was my first exposure to proposals, and it was a horrifying one because no sleep, and then an hour and a half drive home the next day after putting in another whole day of work for the customer. So from that, when they went out of business, surprisingly, I was looking for another position, and I put that down on my resume that I had experience with proposals. I didn't say it was a good experience or a bad one. It just it was just one of those words you put on a resume to hopefully catch someone's attention. And so I had an interview. I went in to actually interview for a job to do corporate communications, and that was at MITRE Corporation, which became GDIT after acquisition. And halfway during the interview, the person I was interviewing with looked at me and said, "I see you have the word proposal on your resume." And I said, yeah, just kind of like, yeah, it's something else I've done. She's like, "Have I got an opportunity for you?" I think sometimes we learn a little late that we should run when we hear those words. But it turned out to be actually a very good thing. I didn't know what I had signed up for, but I became a one-woman task order proposal shop for Antion, and that was actually, it fueled their explosive growth. They had just set up a GWAC center to process all of these, the GWAC and IDIQ and schedule opportunities that were starting to flow out of the federal government. And my job was to interact with everyone in the company, no matter where in the world they were, to get these proposals done. So it was exciting because I like that kind of deadline. You're just always racing to meet one deadline or another, and there's always something waiting to happen. So it's I can't juggle, but I can juggle proposals. So that it was exciting. It was a lot of adrenaline and a lot of success stories, and it got a lot of visibility because we really grew the company, and it was very rewarding. And I like those proposals where things are done quickly. You have a finished product and it's out the door and you move on. So which most of my coworkers who are in the strategic proposal side of it found that the tactical proposals were beneath them. And they told me this. They said, "We hate when you go on vacation because we have to do your job for you." So it eventually grew. The company realized that there was so much revenue that was coming in from these, what they call the low-hanging fruit. So I ended up eventually with a team of 4 or 5 people, and we were churning out hundreds of proposals every year, and it was an exciting time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it really is rewarding when you get that proposal in, and then particularly when you hear back about the win, right?
Yes, and that was another exciting thing, is that most of these task orders, the award cycle was so short. You turn it in on a Thursday, and maybe on a Friday or Monday you'd get the award. It was very, that reward cycle was very quick. So it was almost like being a proposal junkie.
I love that term, proposal junkie. I'm stealing it.
Just pay me a royalty, please.
Sure thing. So you mentioned your first proposal effort as being quite a memorable one, and maybe not for the right ways. I'm sure you have some others that have been memorable over the years. Are there any that stick out in your mind?
Well, it was when I was doing these task orders at Antion, I had a capture manager, and this is how it worked, is that I was the support person. The capture manager was supposed to lead the effort, and typically the capture manager was also the person in the line organization who was the program manager. This person had very little interest in this proposal, which he didn't think it had any chance of winning. So he was just hard to find. And, if I ran into him in the elevator, he would always try to scuttle away because I'd be like, "Hey, what about? And so the day it was due, and because I'm a support person, I was like, "Hey, this is due today. And I wasn't the one that's supposed to submit it. It was a hard copy delivery to the customer over in Herndon, Virginia, which is about 10 miles from where we worked. he wasn't in that day. Oh, I'm homesick. So I had to pull together the entire proposal. And this is back, most companies, this wouldn't work, but at Antion, it was kind of the Wild West of proposals back then, that things would get submitted with only a verbal approval. There was no review other than who was submitting it. I ended up, and I had people from the line organization whose jobs depended on this. They were helping me get this thing done. I had to get it all together, the cost proposal, the technical proposal, print it all, and get it reviewed and approved. And then I had to drive it over to Herndon in the middle of a blinding rainstorm to deliver it to the contracting office. I think I got there with 5 minutes to spare. This is the typical, the superwoman flying in at the last minute to deliver it. And it was just memorable in that nobody seemed to think it was unusual that this had happened. So that's why I was very happy when everything started going to online. Just
Absolutely.
uploading a file or emailing a file to somebody.
Oh, for sure. It makes things so much easier. Different hurdles though with, making sure it gets through the server, but.
Right. Yeah. But typically that wasn't my responsibility. My responsibility was making sure it was done with whatever amount of time they said they needed to upload it. But when you've got binders in hand and you're trying to get somewhere, it was nerve wracking because that was the first time I'd ever delivered a proposal. And all I could think about was if I miss a turnoff or I get there too late and it's just, I'm going to be the one that the proposal person failed us. Because that's usually where it seems to be where the breakdown is. Somewhere in the proposal cycle, the proposal shop left us high and dry. So a lot was riding on that short drive. It seemed like a lifetime though, that it was 10 miles, but man, it felt like I was driving across the country.
No, yeah, particularly when you're that close to the deadline.
Yes. Yep.
So before we dig a little bit more into your proposal background and some APMP things, can you tell us 3 things that not many people know about you?
Well, if I told you, then people would know, wouldn't they? Let's see. Well, I am a person, I prefer to be outdoors. And so it's kind of funny that I have a job where I seem to be sitting in an office in front of computers all day long, but I have a beautiful view out my window here of my yard, and I see butterflies and birds and blue sky, and I just always want to be out there. And that's what motivates me to get my work done, is because I'm a nature lover. If I'm not sitting at my desk, I'm out in my yard doing something. And not many people know that because I guess I don't come across as an outdoors person.
Oh, but the outdoors really is just like so relaxing. It can help you decompress and just set your mind straight, particularly when you're in a stressful business like we are in.
Yes, I find digging holes is great therapy.
Ooh. In the sand? Are you close to the beach in Florida?
I am. I'm actually on the barrier island that extends from Port Canaveral, which is where Cape Canaveral and Cocoa Beach are located. It goes, I'm on that barrier island. So I have the ocean about a block from me to the east, and then about a block to me to the west is the Indian River Lagoon, which is a very long lagoon made up of the Indian River and the Banana River that flow almost the length of this Brevard County, which is about 72 miles long.
Oh, wow. What a beautiful place.
It is, except when there's a hurricane approaching.
Yeah, I can imagine. So you have a really unique company name, Eau Gallie by the Sea. Can you share with us the inspiration for that name?
Sure. Well, the area I live here, this is called Eau Gallie. And
okay.
Just north of me, what we most people would call a bridge, we call them causeways here, when they link two pieces of land, and there's a big river or body of water in between. And so it's the Eau Gallie Causeway, but this whole area is called Eau Gallie by the sea. And when I was looking for a company name, I was like, the usual ones. Well, I'm on the Space Coast or Melbourne or, something catchy to do with writing or proposals. And I just finally was like, I like Eau Gallie. And so I started using that when I did my doing business as application with the state. And then I signed up for Carl Dixon has Proposal Library. And I know Carl. And so I registered because I used to manage the GDIT subscription to his library. And so when I registered with my Eau Gallie, he wrote back to me. He says, I love your name, but he says, nobody's going to know how to pronounce it. And I said, I know, but it's different. Hopefully it'll stick in people's minds, but it's kind of the O is French for water. And the galley part it's not French, but they think it's derived from the word rocky. The ocean here, there's a lot of coquina rock in it. So if you go in the water, there's it's like almost like a reef right off the low tide. That is the coquina rock. So it's kind of so it means rocky water.
Oh, very cool.
Hopefully that doesn't have any application to my proposal support. Now that I think about it.
So you're a one-woman proposal shop. What advice would you give to, a fellow one-woman proposal shop colleague?
Well, my advice, I think the hardest thing is getting started. And my advice is use all the connections that you've made all your years of working for other people and in other companies. Let them know what you're doing. And it's amazing the response I got when I hung up my shingle. I created a company page on LinkedIn and put some information on my personal page about starting up. The response has been great. I've had people I've worked with at Antion, people from GDIT, and most of my clients now are referrals from those are my original coworkers or people that I did task order proposals for. So it's kind of hard because you have to put on the hat of being the business developer for yourself as well as being the person doing the work. And it's an interesting juggling act. Here again, I kind of like that whole juggling a million things at once. And it actually feeds that part of me that enjoys that to be all doing this work, doing invoicing and trying to make sure that I have work lined up. So, and not too much work.
Yeah.
And that's, the problem of being the one person shop is saying, overcommitting. So, but I do have a friend of mine. She just retired from a local company down here in the area, and she's actually working for me. So I'm actually like a two-woman shop now, but she's a consultant for me. She's doing mostly business development and pipeline consulting for small businesses. So I feel like business is booming and it's growing. Last year, I took a lot of time off from work last year. I got laid off from GD in December 2018. And that day was the worst day of my professional life, to be laid off in 5 minutes, where, suddenly your world turns on end. And then the next morning I woke up and I was like, this is the best day of my life. I'm moving on. I found a new, a new door in my life because things have been going terribly at GDIT because of the integration with CSRA. There was just no, it was not smooth sailing at all. And it was exciting. So, and I, of course, the first thing I think is, oh my gosh, I got to find another job. So I started job hunting. And then I realized I'd gotten a severance. I had some They actually even sent me my bonus, which was a big surprise. And
Yeah.
and I took most of last year off, and I traveled the world.
Oh, wow.
So it became a path forward. I'd been kind of stagnating. I've been at GD 18 years, and I think I did a lot of great things, and I learned a lot of things, and I met a lot of great people, but I think I was overdue. And this was just, rather than me opening the door and going at it, I got the door opened and I got pushed at it, but it had a great, it was a great change. And I think that's to kind of circle back to the advice of the unknown is to be, everyone's afraid of the unknown. It's, people say, well, it's what you know. Is it the bad thing you know or the bad thing you don't know? Well, people prefer the bad thing they know because they know what it is. And to move on and not have anything in hand. People are always like, oh, don't leave a job till you have another one. I'm like, well, what if your job leaves you? What do you do? Mm-hmm. And that instinct of trying to find that same norm of applying for proposal management jobs. I even went to Texas to interview for a job. I thought, maybe I'll move to Texas. I was kind of like, well, maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll do that. I felt like I had so many options. And then in the interview, they're like, oh, yes, and we work here in this room, and we're here for 12 hours a day. We don't work from home. We don't do this. We don't. And I thought, what am I getting myself into? And I was like, let's go travel the world a little more and figure it out. So getting myself free of the corporate world and becoming my own boss, it's empowering. You just have to jump in. It's like jumping into the cold water. You have to do it. You can do all the planning you want, but until you actually get in and see what it's like, and it's not all rocky water. So, tying that back in, but it's been an amazing experience. And I think there's a lot of people who don't believe that they can do it, but they can. And there's a great need out there for these small businesses for support that I'm providing. And I'm at the point where I'm going to have to start turning away customers just because I don't want to overcommit and compromise the quality of the work or the quality of my life.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's so inspirational how you took something that, was such an initial disappointment, and then you were just able to recover, and you took advantage of that time to travel and really figure out what the next step should be, rather than, taking the next job that came along, just really figuring out what was the right move for you. And it sounds like you're in a really amazing place now. So that's amazing.
Yes, I'm enjoying it. I set my own times, my schedule. Like yesterday morning, I went and played a tennis match. I just adjust my schedule, and I meet all my deadlines, but I don't have the artificial constraint of being in an office, say 8 to 5, which we know in the proposal world, that's just the beginning of your day. So I'm enjoying the flexibility, and I probably work more hours than I did when I was on payroll, just because in addition to the hours I'm working for the customers, there's the hours of research or responding to people's requests for proposal support, how I'm qualified. Like I get some work off Upwork, which was a great place for me to start when things were pretty slow. I would go on Upwork.com and put proposals out there or just register on there, and people would reach out to me because of my qualifications to provide some proposal support. And it's been very interesting to see the response, and that people are saying, we used to do this on our own and we weren't successful, so now we're looking for people to help us, and people like you. And so there is a market out there. Just you have to put your finger in the water and then say, man, it's cold and it's unknown, but just jump right in and start swimming. And it's an amazing journey.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we mentioned earlier that you joined APMP in 2001. How did you learn about APMP?
I started at MITRE Corporation in January 2001, and everyone in our proposal organization was a member. The company paid for it. I had never heard of it before then. Circle back to when I was at the 8A company saying, there's got to be a better way to do proposals. Well, suddenly being introduced to APMP and saying, oh, wow, look, there's a process, there's an organization, there's the Shipley. I was all like, oh, I guess I was having some lucid moments there during this proposal insanity, saying there's got to be a better way, and there is a better way. So I joined, and we all went to the conference, and I think I actually, maybe in 2001, maybe 2002, I lost most of my content, my proposals, presentations when I left GDIT, because they pretty quickly cut off your access to the network. So I lost all my historical files, but I think I presented in 2001 at that conference. So I just jumped in and went for it. I was like, this is great. This is a great way to meet people, to learn. I just was so excited to see that there was a way to manage that chaos, or herd those cats.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think so many of us can relate to that, aha moment of APMP. And you joined it, 19 years ago. How have you seen APMP evolve over the years?
Oh, it's amazing. It's really grown up into a professional organization. I remember back in the early days, it was fairly casual. There was a lot more vendor influence in the presentations, that sometimes you go into a presentation and you're like, it's like an infomercial for a vendor. And it was very casual, very very laid back, still a tremendous opportunity for learning, but it is really amazing to see now, with what Rick Harris has done to grow APMP into a true international organization, and the support mechanisms. And I'm actually on a new work group with Sonia Woolsey. We're looking to do some knowledge management to help APMP with the content on their websites. So there's just a lot of opportunity now. So it's kind of exciting to see. I feel, as my career progressed, I feel, my organization, APMP, I call it my organization, has grown up too, and is really embraced the change and the diversity of what proposal management means around the world. Every country has their own acquisition regulations, and certainly, as I found in the US, every state and every locality has their own, but there's some underlying basics, and that's what ties us all together.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It is really great seeing how the organization has really grown and evolved, and it's great to be a part of it. You mentioned contributing to, early on, even the APMP conferences. I'm not sure, do you remember that first presentation you gave, or do you have any memorable presentations that stand out to you?
Well, I do remember I was pretty nervous. That was one of my first times actually presenting in a large group situation. But I had been doing, the cool thing about when I was working at Antion is we were kind of a small company, that I was able to do training. I was teaching people how we do task orders. So I was comfortable with standing in front of a classroom of people, or we would sometimes do webinars. So it was pretty nerve-wracking, but I was so passionate about what I was talking about. It was probably tied in with task orders, probably because task orders back then were starting to get big, I guess is what you'd say. That it was the emerging market in federal contracting. So I think I'm guessing that first year I was talking about task orders. I moved on kind of to talking more about knowledge management and managing data that was relevant to the proposal and business development lifecycle later on conferences. But over the years, I've lost track of how many I've presented at. But sometimes it was just the people I was that would ask me to be on a panel, and I was with people like Betsy Blackney. I co-presented with her. Mike Walsh, BJ Lowney, Beth Wingate, she's the app maven. I worked on a couple of panels with her, and meeting people like Bob Lofeld, Carl Dixon. I think he was very early on. He hasn't gone to a bid and proposal con, I think probably in 15 years, but he actually lives around the corner from me. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, he's not too far from me. Mike Parkinson, Dick Easom, these are all people that I've met at these conferences, and it's just, to me, it's we have our own little world of what we call rock stars, and these are the people who are influencers in our organization, and it's been a privilege and an honor to sometimes even co-present with them or to be part of a panel, and to have the ability to reach out to them for support and just interact with them. It's amazing. This is an industry that people need to embrace if you want to be in the proposal environment. There's so many resources out there, and people are so willing to help you. It's really a really amazing group.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you also, you were involved on the APMP International Board, and you're very involved at the Southern Proposal chapter. Can you tell us a little bit about, those experiences and why being involved was important to you?
Well, I think it all boils down to what I think it's been described as imposter syndrome. Are you good enough? Do you know what you're doing? Some days I ask myself that, and sit here and look at all these books I have, like Proposals for Dummies, and I look at these books and say, do I really know what I'm doing here? So being involved, and it's been making a difference in my confidence, and that's certainly what helped me to navigate the transition from being one piece in a giant corporate cog to pretty much being the one woman band that I am. So on the board, spending time with people who are passionate about the future of proposals. Most of my friends here, the people that I hang out with, they have no idea what I do. They think, oh, you work in proposals, and I think I'm in the wedding business. I was like, no, but if you know any men. But it's kind of you have to be an insider to have people to communicate with that are on the same wavelength of understanding what you're going through and what what your job entails and how you're trying to grow professionally. So between being on the board of directors, getting to spend more time with people like Rick Harris, meeting people like Sonia Woolsey, Sonia and I are good friends, and I wouldn't have met her if I hadn't been on the board of directors, because we move in such different proposal worlds. She's in Texas area, I'm in Florida, and the SPAC, as we call the Southern Proposal Accents Conference, that's really the Carolinas and Georgia and Florida. So that's my current chapter. I kind of bounce back and forth between the NCA chapter and Florida because I was in Northern Virginia for so long. But now I think I'm firmly in the Florida Sunshine chapter. They even gave me an award. They gave me an award last year, so I think I have to stay with them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Surprise rapid fire questions round. So I suspect Bhaskar is going to ask you a little bit about some of those travels.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I couldn't study up on the surprise rapid fire question round. Is this kind of like what is it, Sudden Jeopardy or?
A little bit like that.
Okay.
He will slowly take you towards that, Gillian, so don't worry. Gillian, tennis. Let's talk about some of your hobbies and interests. Well, Gillian, tennis took up at, somewhere in between in your 30s. So, and you are winning tournaments, Gillian. Can you share your journey, how it all began, and your prestigious Florida Close tournament win, just to trifecta?
Yes. I'm a pretty competitive person. And I when I do things, my focus, I want to do things really well. I don't like coming in second place. I don't want to be adequate. So I took up that. Remember when I said after I left MITRE, I came back to Florida for a little bit. Well, I took up tennis at that time. I was 35 or so. And I happened to see that they were giving tennis lessons over at the Cape Canaveral Recreation Center, which was right across from Johnson Controls where I was working. And I saw it in the newspaper. I know this is before we had Facebook and other electronic ways of finding out what was going on in your neighborhood. So I saw that and I signed up for it. And then I spent a week going, I don't know, these are beginner tennis lessons. This is really, really, I'm uncomfortable because this is something I don't know, but I love tennis. And somebody finally said to me, just go once. If you don't like it, you don't have to go back. And I said, well, that's great advice. So I went and I was terrible. And I was terrible for weeks. I loved it so much, but that was the highlight of my week. I went back, I think it was once or twice a week. And everybody there, even though they were all better than me, and I persevered for months. And so finally, one day, it was the aha moment that getting it all together of your feet, your body, the racket, the ball, your eyes on the ball, it all came together. And it was the most amazing moment of my life, saying, oh, this is amazing. This is, I can hit the ball and control it. And the instructor told me later, he said, so many times I was ready to tell you, just give up because there was just no way you were ever going to be able to play tennis because you were so bad at it. He says, you were just so bad. He says, you hit the ball and go straight up. You wouldn't even hit the ball. The ball would go right by you. And it was amazing. And I just never looked back. Because if he had said that to me at any point during those lessons, I probably would have quit. But he didn't. And I moved back to Virginia. I started playing tennis up there. I found some teams. Northern Virginia is a very competitive area for many reasons. Everybody up there is type A personalities, including people who play tennis. And I loved it. I just loved it. I played on teams for Northern Virginia, for DC, for Maryland. I was traveling around the Beltway every day and on the weekends, playing tennis in these different leagues. It was passion. It was such a passion. I said, I worked to pay for my tennis balls and my tennis shoes. And then I came back to Florida, and Florida here, we're fortunate that tennis is a lot cheaper because the courts are all outdoors. You're not paying the indoor rates, and you can play all year round. And I just started playing more and more, and it was a great way to relieve my proposal stress because you could go out and just really hit the ball. And tennis is a defined sport. You have a scoring system, and there's a lot of strategy involved. So it engaged my brain in different ways than proposals did. And it was just brought out such joy in my life. And it really was an antidote to the grind of working at a desk every day and dealing with people who didn't want to be cooperative, people who didn't want to help you. So it was, the independent, but you're also part of a team if you're playing doubles. It just struck me as such a great sport in so many ways. And I started playing tennis tournaments, and I traveled the state of Florida. There are a lot of tennis tournaments, and met a lot of great people who are still friends now to this day. And I started winning tournaments. And I was like, I didn't take tennis up when I was a junior. I didn't go to college and play tennis. I was like, but I can outthink most of you because I've understood the strategy, because proposal strategy is the same thing. It's herding cats. It's understanding the winning solutions. And it just applied nicely to tennis. And I started winning tournaments. And that's how I ended up one year winning the trifecta for the Florida State Closed Tournament, which is the biggest, most prestigious tournament in the state for amateur players. And they changed the rules, so you can't actually play in all three events anymore. I won the women's singles, the women's doubles, and the mixed doubles title that year. So I had 3 beautiful trophies, and they're in my trophy case. And I'm actually at the point where I have too many trophies, and I'm trying to find out where I can donate them, because it's just, I look at those trophies and I want to keep going and win more, but I don't have room for any more.
Wow, Gillian, that's amazing. I think the closest I ever won a tennis tournament is in the video game, actually. That's it.
I could probably beat you in Mario Tennis.
I know. Tell me about it. So that's it. And then these days, I just take my boys out to play tennis. But this is hardcore, that too, winning. I think playing tennis for hobbies is one, but winning championship, that too, prestigious Florida Closed Tournament is a very different league altogether. Gillian, I think you will inspire so many people to take up sports with this current climate. Actually, that's so true. And I really like the way you connected that to proposal field as well in between, which was quite cool. You did mention, Gillian, that you took a 6-month break or a few month break after you finished. I think you had a sudden stop at your previous company. And, I think I will read out some of the places that you traveled. I think this just tells me it's pretty much like an airline company telling we are traveling to these destinations. So I'm pretty much, I will touch them. New Orleans, Dallas, Los Angeles, Alaska, Melbourne, Sydney, Perth, Cape Town, Dubai, Doha, Milan, New Zealand, Hong Kong, Bangkok, and Taiwan. That's super impressive, Gillian. I think the earliest I've heard it is when I take Emirates Airline, which is the closest one for me. They say we fly to 230 destinations, something like that. That's how I see you. So where did you go first? And can you please share the memories of where you began and how you went to all these places, your travel plan?
Well, it started that day that I woke up on, I think it was December 6th, 2018, the day after I'd been laid off, which was, putting this in quotes, the worst day of my professional life. I woke up and the first thought was like, I don't have to go to work today. It was kind of an exciting thought. And then I thought, oh, I'm free. And I was like, I think I'm going to go to the Australian Open this year, or it's in January. So it was in January 2019. So I suddenly found my passion to get out of bed, and I went and sat down at the computer and I started poking around. That's kind of a hobby of mine. I always like to find the best flights, and I'm always interested in the airplanes that I'm flying on. I have a bucket list. Like, I actually just booked a trip, hopefully that's going to happen in December. That'll be on a 747 in first class. So I'm always I follow these news groups and these Facebook groups that are for elite flyers. And I thought to myself, let me go see if there's any seats on the Qantas aircraft. They do a 380, and it goes from Dallas to Sydney. And I went and looked, and we call this the unicorn miles redemption because it's so rare. And it just so happened I found a round trip that day that I could go to the Australian Open in first class on Qantas Airlines using miles, and I booked it. And I said, this is a sign. Because people have been talking about flying Qantas in first class. You get this fabulous suite that you sit in and they take care of you, and you have this giant chair, which is like a lazy boy. And I was like, this is the way to travel. It's fabulous. It's a $14,000 ticket if you buy a ticket each way. So I went to the Australian Open and I used the miles to get there. I used Marriott points to stay at the Marriott that most of the tennis players stay at when they go to the Australian Open. And so it was a really cheap trip for me. So that started me, and I just started booking other flights using miles and leveraging airfare sales. And then what we commonly do is you book American is part of the One World. So you book on another airline, but you credit the points to American. So if you fly on Qatar Airways and you credit it back to American, they don't credit you how much you spend on the ticket, but they credit it based on how far you flew. So you can take a $300 ticket and turn that into maybe a $2,000 equivalent spend, which helps you for your status. So I achieved the executive platinum status, which gives you upgrades. It gives you access to the first class lounges around the world. I traveled around the world in business class and first class, and I think I spent $10,000 on airplane tickets last year, but I ended up probably with maybe $70,000 worth of upgrades and access to various airport lounges. That's priceless and saves you a lot of money because you don't buy food and drink when you're at the airport. So it became kind of a passion to parlay that one trip into all those other trips that I took. And I kept going this year until I was in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia in the middle of March, when things started going sideways with COVID, and I barely made it back before things got really crazy. I came back through Japan. I was on Japan Airlines, and the flights were empty. There was nobody on the flights. This is a 777 with holds hundreds of people, and there were like 11 of us on the plane coming from Japan back to the US, and kind of been grounded since then, but that's given me a real focus on growing my consulting business. So, I think it was a good break for me. It really helped me refresh and decide that this year I needed to make more money than I spent, which I did last year. I spent more money than I made.
I think there was a brilliant masterclass on how to use the points in your air miles to travel the world there, Gillian. I think you have to maybe do it even more. But it's impressive though. I mean, like taking a compelling event that happened in your life and converting the negative experience into positive, and traveling, it's unbelievable. That's so positive story. I'm sure listeners will get that message pretty spot on. So while you're not traveling, Gillian, you also have a yard at home with butterfly and bird friendly. Where did it all began, and how much butterflies or birds do you currently have in your yard?
Well, I just saw a Gulf fritillary on my pokeweed, which is it's not a very glamorous name, pokeweed, but it's butterflies love it. So I see a lot of butterflies, zebra longwings, which are the state butterfly of Florida. I have a lot of the zebra longwings are crazy right now. The monarchs, I've had some monarchs, but not too many lately. I think they don't like the heat as much. And I have a Dutchman's pipe vine in the back of my yard, and that gets a lot of the pipe vine swallowtails. And those are the big blue and black and yellow butterflies. So there's a lot of butterflies flying around, and I get some birds. I've had cardinals that nested in my yard this year, and I've got to watch them teach their fledgling how to fly and how to hop around in my bushes. And I've had a fledgling blue jay that was in my yard that the parents were teaching him. So it's kind of a interesting place to be, where you feel like you're in nature, but you're so close to everything. So I'm very fortunate that I have a yard that brings me such joy. And that's actually why I bought this house. I had to completely renovate it. It was built in the early 80s and they never updated it. So I bought for the yard. I didn't buy for the house. So I love the yard, and people are always coming over and saying, it's amazing, come into your backyard, and it's not even, doesn't even feel like it's near the beach. It's so tropical. It brings me a lot of pleasure. And I can't go buy a garden store without buying something. So I always have plants that are waiting to be put in the ground.
My God, I think we can keep on talking about your passions. Outside proposals, you have much more to say, Gillian. So let's just dwell more on the other side. Gillian, because I did touch some of the places that you traveled, Gillian. So let's pick up one thing. If you could visit any place in the world post-COVID now, where would you choose to go and why?
Oh, well, there's a couple. Like, it's hard to narrow it down, but I will say probably I went to Cape Town, South Africa last year, but because I was working on a proposal, I got there and I made the mistake of opening my laptop, and a proposal we had submitted, we were working on the evaluation notices. I spent my entire vacation sitting in this hotel room that this is a Marriott, so I got upgraded to a fabulous room that overlooked Table Mountain. I could see the harbor and everything. And I never got anywhere beyond, I went from the room down to the executive lounge, where I drowned my sorrows every night with great South African wine. And I just worked. I never got out of the hotel to explore Cape Town. So I'd have to say, I'm hoping, and I've got the tickets booked for December, and I'm hoping that'll happen, and go back there and visit Cape Town, South Africa.
That's beautiful. And are you a morning person or a night person?
I am a morning person. I love mornings. But I do love, I love the sun coming up. I try to get down to the beach to see the sun coming up. Right now, it's sea turtle nesting season here. And if you go very early in the morning, you may be lucky enough to see the mother sea turtles that have just finished laying eggs on the beach. They're going back to the sea. It's very powerful to watch that. But then again, at night, if you go down in the evening, a lot of times that's when the babies will hatch, and you see the little turtles popping out of the sand and running down to the sea. So I've learned to embrace, especially with in the proposal world, 24/7. So I prefer mornings, but evenings are beautiful too.
That's nice. And if you were attending a Halloween party, what would your costume be and why?
Well, I have gone as Maria Sharapova, just because that's I have a lot of tennis outfits, and I had a blonde wig, so that's I've been told I look like Monica Seles, so that might be an upcoming costume. It requires less thought. You just put on a tennis outfit, and I don't have a lot of creativity when it comes to Halloween costumes, unfortunately.
That's good. I think that's good. You're repurposing what you already have. Again, your prudence comes there, Gillian. Points to travel using your tennis dress for the Halloween party. There is so much to learn from you. So what takes you out of your comfort zone?
Oh, gosh, there's so much. Is this like, am I gonna have to pay you for for a therapy lesson here? I think what takes me out of my comfort zone are people who are negative, dealing with people who only come with problems and don't have any solutions, and are just that negative energy that's my comfort zone is solving problems. And the toxic, just everything is negative is definitely keeps me from being comfortable. So I don't know if that's the right answer.
That's okay. You tried, which is good.
See, I was very uncomfortable with that question.
That's a good one. So if given a chance, who would you like to be for a day?
Does it have to be a person?
Anyone, anything, person, thing.
I would love to be a bird for a day. I would just, especially down here, we have such amazing birds. We have everything from pelicans to wood storks. There's not too many flamingos around here, but we have this roseate spoonbills. There's so many birds, even the wood storks, which are kind of ugly. They're so ugly, they're beautiful. But seeing a bird flying overhead, the view that they get, that's probably why I like to fly so much. People are like, how can you get on a plane and fly for 14 hours somewhere? And I was like, I just love flying. I said, I love looking out the window and seeing the world below me and just seeing how everything is so different, but we're all part of the same world. I just think the bird's eye view would be amazing, to just fly around and see everything, and then fly down into the backyards and kind of poke around in people's backyards and then fly around. It's just free. It's so freeing. I think as humans we have so many limitations on us. Even if butterflies, like I see butterflies out my window right now, I'm like, look at the butterflies go. I think maybe just to be able to fly for a day would be cool, whether it's a bird or a butterfly or
yes,
any other flying creature.
I would 100% agree with you. And sometimes in my dream, I do think that I'm an eagle on a flyover. My wife always tells me, don't go close to the balcony. you might think you are a bird, and the next moment you'll be on the floor dead. So, every now and then I do get dreams of being an eagle and, flying. But yeah, that's funny. I might be a bird. You and me, we might be a bird in our past lives, Gillian. We never know.
True. Well, the eagle, there's a lot of symbolism there, because the eagle is certainly like at the higher end, the apex of the bird world. So maybe you have that's like foretelling your professional growth to being like the American eagle, the version of an American eagle. You're flying high. There's birds that don't have wings, like the kiwi birds. You're stuck on the ground, but
yes.
Soaring high. An eagle, nobody messes with an eagle.
That's so nice of you, Gillian. Thank you. Gillian, what do you get every time you go when grocery shopping?
I don't go grocery shopping much anymore. I'm afraid to. A lot of people down here that don't like to wear masks. I usually get something in the produce department that is like right now it's cherries. So whatever's the in season fruit is, to me, is a special treat. That's because of course the produce department is like one of the first stops. It kind of distracts me from going over into the bakery side, because they're side by side. So I head to the produce and I find something there that is a treat that will take the place of something that in the bakery department that's not as good for me. So I try to fill up my cart in the produce department. So there's always the standard, the celery, some lettuce, tomatoes maybe, but there's always a special fruit for a treat.
So who haven't you seen or talked in a long time and you hope that they're doing okay?
Joe Biden. Oh, let's get off the politics here. There are so many people in my proposal world that I haven't seen because I didn't go to the conference last year. A SPAC was canceled this year. The NCA event was canceled. So just my whole proposal community, which I do see, people post on LinkedIn, people I'm friends with on Facebook, but I just think there's just so many people that I think most of us haven't seen. And I think we have to worry out for each other about not only for professionally, but personally, are people doing okay? And the isolation is sometimes the hardest thing. And even though I've been a remote worker for many years, to go from being part of a team to suddenly I'm the team of one, and that's a tough transition. And for people who were not used to having to work at home in isolation, yeah, I think we all need to take care of each other and worry about each other, just because it's a massive change in how we do business. And maybe it's going to work out to the better. But I just worry about everybody that I work with or have worked with, and I don't know if everybody's handling it okay.
So true, Gillian, so true. So who are the people who have been the most influential in your life and career?
Oh, I guess the ones that I haven't aggravated enough. Well, I will say, I think, because I thought long and hard about this question, and certainly I think that the standard answer, people would say, well, my parents, and yes, but I think, certainly I would hope for all of us that our parents were influential in helping us find the beginning of the path that we're currently on. But I came back to the same person time and time again. There was one key person that believed in me and made me believe that I was good enough. And then this goes back to the imposter syndrome that so many people have, especially women. So after I packed my stuff up and I moved to Northern Virginia and did my stint looking for the right company to start my professional career and help me get a master's degree at the MITRE Corporation, I had a member of the technical staff that I worked with on many projects. I was in the software engineering center, and I was a technical communication specialist. And if a lot of people in the Northern Virginia area know the hierarchy at MITRE is that the MTS, the members of the technical staff, were on a pedestal, and a support staff were shining their shoes. So this guy was amazing, and unfortunately he passed away a few years ago. He had relocated to Florida, so I had actually reconnected with him several years ago after he moved to Florida, and then he passed away within the past couple of years due to brain cancer. But he allowed me to grow my skills professionally, because my job was to help him on this project, and he mentored me, and I did so much of the technical work, and then I wrote the entire report, and he was my mentor. He was looking it over. He had corrections, edits, discussing things, and then we submitted it to our boss with our names on it, and the boss insisted that my name had to come off because there was just no way that I had done that work. And this guy was so amazing in his defense of what I'd done and in believing in me that that day is when I learned to believe in myself, that I had the ability to do things that I didn't think I was capable of doing. And it was amazing. It sticks with me to this day. And whenever I think about that I can't do something, I'm always like, you can't do it if you don't try. And that has stuck with me. This is 25, 35 years later. It's just we all need someone who not only is a cheerleader, but provides mentoring. And I think that's the most important person ever in my career.
It's very powerful, Gillian. So the last one from me, what have you observed lately that reminded you that people are good?
I'm pretty tied in with the social media around here. This is a fairly small area, and that people established Facebook groups to provide support. They call them like COVID-19 support groups for people who have lost their jobs, that need food, people that need clothing for their children. They need transportation. And the people that, and this is also not only on Facebook, but on the Nextdoor app, I've seen it. People are doing these things for each other with no expectation of anything other than a thank you. And that's really heartening to see, because I came from all those years in DC where it seemed to be everybody, everybody's racing you around the Beltway because everybody has to get somewhere else very fast because everybody else is very important. That was the biggest change for me moving here, was that it was so laid back. And to see that people that I don't even know, people who are my neighbors, that are offering up all of this support, and that's just heartwarming to me. And I've done the same thing where I'm part of those groups, and people that are asking for support, I'm fortunate enough that I'm able to contribute. My business has been booming, so I'm very fortunate that while people are being laid off or don't have any income, and they need food. People need food. They need a helping hand. Sometimes I wish you can't even hug people nowadays, but it's just, you're giving them virtual hugs and helping out. That's, to me, is a big sign that we're overcoming what's happening. It seems to be happening on a bigger scale of people turning against each other. And so it makes me feel good about what we have, that resilience here within our communities. And I know it's happening across the whole country and across the world, that people are setting aside the drama and just helping out people who need help.
Beautifully said, Gillian, 100%.
All right, Gillian, it's been so interesting hearing about your proposal path and your venture into consulting and the changes in your life and the slower pace down in Florida. Looking back, what's one thing you wish you had known when you started off on your proposal career?
I wish I could have seen the future. To know where I was going, so I could plan better for it. I'm a planner. I like lists. I have a list of things I need to do in the yard, a list of things I need to do for my clients. I like to make lists. I like to do all the planning, and I think I wish I had done better planning for my career. But it just seems like especially in the proposal world, it's kind of now things are more formalized. We have certifications, and people are starting to understand that there's career paths for proposal people. It's not something you fall into because you're good at it, or that there's nowhere else for you to work in the company, but it's become a choice that people are doing this by choice. I know there's a lot of people saying, why would you choose a career like that? I was like, well, no, it chose me. I was chosen. So that's what I really wish, is that the support mechanisms that exist now, like even things like the proposal on the book that Charlie Devine put together, the proposals for dummies, certification plans, I wish that had been around when I started out. I think I would have gone a lot further in my proposal career with that kind of infrastructure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's amazing the things that the organization is doing right now to kind of promote this as a profession and provide those tools and resources so that there is a career path and people know where they're going with this career path. So I think so many can relate to that.
Yes, oh, absolutely.
And over the years, you've talked about all of these wonderful people that you've come into contact and the great influences on your career. What's the best piece of advice that one of those individuals has given to you, and who gave it to you?
Oh, I will not name who gave me this advice, but for multiple reasons. But it was very on in my career as a manager when I was managing the task order team. I'd grown it from just I was doing it to I was hiring people, and the advice was, don't be disappointed when people can't live up to your expectations. Accept their limitations. And because it was, I was so frustrated with what I felt was the lack of passion for doing, going above and beyond. And I'm not the type of person to just, you do enough to get by. It's like, you got to overdo it or not do it at all. And same thing I did with tennis is, I don't want to play tennis if I'm going to be terrible at it. I want to play tennis and I'm going to insist on being really good. So that was the advice I was given. And it really helped me to put a better perspective on what I saw as failures by people who couldn't live up to my level of expectation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges for individuals going from being an individual contributor and having everything done their way, exactly how they would do it, to learning how other people do it and accept, what is good enough to get there and where you can help them improve and where you kind of need to let things go.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So my last question for you, Gillian, we've heard so much about what you've done and kind of where you are now. What's next for you? What are you looking forward to in the future?
Hopefully going on the professional tennis tour. Well, that's a pipe dream. So that's certainly, if we come back to reality, well, I'm going to keep focused on growing Eau Gallie Consulting. I don't want it to grow too big or too fast that it becomes a source of stress rather than a career. And I'm going to dream about resuming my world travels. So, because there's so much to see out there, and I find the traveling expands my horizons and refreshes me for coming back and working. But so I've got my fingers crossed. I'm actually registered to attend the Bid and Proposal Conference in Sydney, Australia in March. So,
wow.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the perks of being the person who runs the budget at the conference. So saying, well, I need some expenses here because there's not a lot of expenses in the proposal world. And it's like, if you make too much money, you pay a lot more taxes. So I said, no, professional development. I think there's some professional development in Australia.
Absolutely. That'll be an amazing trip, and fingers crossed that does happen.
Yes. So that's the kind of thing I'm looking forward to, is combining professional development with world travels. I did a couple of years ago, I presented at the APMP conference in England, and that was amazing too. So I just, when you get these opportunities, it's so much to see and do. And I've met some people over there that I've stayed in contact with. I think you just have to sometimes get out of that comfort zone. And that's, for me, is a comfort zone of where I've learned that, well, I stay home and I just work, or I go travel the world. There's somewhere in between, and that's meeting people, because I travel the world solo. I don't meet a lot of people when I go traveling, because I tend to be just doing my own thing.
Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, traveling, hopefully things settle down in the world and you're able to make those travel plans happen.
I hope so. There's so much left to see and do. Hopefully not running out of time.
Looks like you still have a lot more points in your air miles, Gillian.
I do. I'm always looking. trips are canceled. I always look and book new ones. So that's what you got. Life is you take what you're doing, and you have to have a plan for the future. And this, I think that's what why we work, is you have to look beyond the job and look where life can take you. And the job is going to get you there financially, hopefully, but it's the passion you have for what you do and what you want to do and what you want to learn that's going to get you to the next level.
Definitely, Gillian. That's a very powerful message to end the talk. So, Gillian, thank you so much for your time today. It's really been a privilege to have you with us at Scribble Talk. Wish you all the good health and happiness. Continue to travel, continue to inspire community around you, and stay safe, stay healthy, Gillian. And so looking forward to see you very soon.
All right. Well, thank you both. This has been a great experience. This was out of my comfort zone doing this. So thank you for making this happen. This is an awesome podcast. And I've actually told one of my clients I was doing this today, and they were fascinated to hear that there was a proposal podcast. So you may have a new listener, because I actually have a meeting with this customer in a half hour, and I'm going to give him the information of how to access your podcasts.
Thank you, Gillian. Just give them a warning shot that we don't talk much about proposal. We talk about the person who do the proposal.
Well, that's all tied together, because that's what makes us we just have a giant butterfly just flew by, so that's a great ending.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Look after yourselves. Take care, Gillian.
Thank you. Bye.
To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Please visit batchuscribble.com/podcast to listen to this episode and check out any of our other previously recorded episodes. If you've enjoyed today's interview, don't forget to subscribe, review, and share the Scribble Talk podcast. We hope you'll check out our next episode, where we interview another industry expert and special guest. Until then, it's Ashley Kays,
Bhaskar Sundram,
signing off.